everywhere in the world, people are looking for more answers to why they don't feel as good as they should. And so that's what prompted a lot of the things where I'm now able to have conversations with people online, get them the testing they need after listening to what they've been going through, then have the results and do reviews with them and be able to customize a plan that's going to specifically address their nutritional needs and in the forms they need to be in and based on deficiencies, so that those things that we call symptoms are really just drop-down effects from the inability to give the body what it needs to just function normally.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only, and it's not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer, and today we're thrilled to have Dr. David Lipman join us. Dr. Lipman is the owner of Physical Evidence Chiropractic and a seasoned chiropractic physician who has helped thousands of patients unlock their potential. Beyond his clinical expertise, Dr. Lipman is living proof of biooptimization, maintaining peak strength, endurance, and health well into his 60s. His mission: to share the tools and strategies that have transformed his life so you can achieve your own optimal wellness. Stay tuned for an inspiring conversation packed with actionable insights with Dr. David Lipman. Enjoy our episode of Personalized. Welcome back to Personalized. I'm here with Dr. David Lipman. David, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well, Dr. David.
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you because you're doing a really cool program that is in line with, literally directly with my interests. So again, it's a bit selfish of me. I love everything you're doing, and I'd love to start the show to hear about the programs that you offer, especially the main program that includes so much wonderful technology.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me, David. And I love these opportunities because there's so many people out there, and I meet them almost daily because they find me, that can benefit from a lot of these, cutting edge technologies and modalities that, the bottom line, just get our bodies to work better. And, we're up against so much in this modern world that's just working against us. I tell my patients, the environment, the modern environment is at war with us. And we have to soldier up every day and put on different layers of combat stuff, which could take the form of personalized nutrition or superhuman protocol, which is one of the things we offer. And, some of the other things that we really need to do to invest in the incline of our health rather than just manage the decline, which is kind of what we've been taught. After 40, it's all downhill and things like that. So I would say, the brand that we've come up with is biooptimization, and everything that we do here in the office, even from the chiropractic standpoint, is about getting the body to function musculoskeletally, neurologically, and all the different systems through chiropractic care, but all these other layers too, because, we're multi-layered beings in terms of how we function. So there's, different avenues and systems that have to be optimized. So, but it's all about getting to the cellular level and optimizing that. Because once you do that, everything falls in line, because as soon as the cellular level from an energy standpoint starts to diminish, that's when we come up with things that we call diseases, which really, when you look at it, there's only one problem. The main problem is losing energy at the cell level. So if everything is supportive of that, those other things are going to kind of resolve. So that's kind of the gist of everything that we do here.
Well, tell me, why do people come in for this? Is it low energy that you're mostly seeing, or is it, optimal performance? What is the type of patient that you see most?
So if you asked me that in 2018, 2019, I probably have a different answer, because at that point, most of it was musculoskeletal pain related stuff. However, since 2020, and, since, we had the pandemic and the drop down effect of that for those that got sick, and then of course those who did choose to take the vaccine, the level of deterioration of health, looking at energy levels, lethargicness, inability to sleep, hurting all over, headaches, just things that are not responding to the traditional Western medicine way of trying to resolve these things. So people more and more are looking for alternatives to an answer to their issue that they haven't found, in a traditional sense. And I think a lot of the things that have been helpful is a lot of podcasts now where people are able to tap into some other practitioners that are making their voices heard and sharing some of the technologies and modalities that they're doing, sort of like we're doing right here. And so people are starting to look for these things, whereas before they really weren't because they didn't know it existed. So now I'm getting more and more of these people that, have unexplained symptoms. They haven't been able to get resolution. So we start to look through testing now down at the basic, level of function of the cell, starting like with nutrition. When we can look at how somebody's processing or not processing nutrients properly in their cell and knowing specifically what their deficiencies are, we could start building a fortification, if you will, to get that person what they need to, combat the things that are affecting them, that if they have the proper things getting the cell working, they're not going to have symptoms because the cell is going to be strong and it's going to be vibrant and energetic. So that's more of what a lot of people today are, fighting for. And it's all like the drop down effect from these last 3 or 4 years, I'd say.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I would agree with that. Talk to me a bit about the technology for cellular optimization. So I'm on board fully with the nutrient deficiency because I see so much of it in my practice. But what I need to learn about what technologies we can be using to optimize our wellness. Can you tell me some of the things that you do?
Yeah, so we have a process here. It's called the Superhuman Protocol. It's a 3-step process. It starts with a pulsed electromagnetic field. It's a pad that you lay on. And what that does is optimizes our body's plus and minus charges, because as you know, physiologically, all our functioning happens because of an exchange of plus and minus charges. It's how we bring nutrients from our bloodstream into our cell through the cell membrane. It's how we expel the breakdown products or waste products of cell metabolism. It's how our red blood cells carry our oxygen from our lungs to our tissues. Our nervous system's electromagnetic, our muscular system. Basically we are electromagnetic entities, but we don't have our own battery. The earth has been our battery for centuries, but in modern times, many of us live on concrete slabs, not on the earth anymore. We wear rubber soles, so we're losing that electrical recharge every day from the earth's electromagnetic field. It has a low-level electromagnetic field like our bodies do. And so on top of that, all this electrical grid around us and the wireless networks and 5G and Bluetooth, it has high-frequency electromagnetic fields that are actually interrupting the way our low-level fields are working through things called EMFs, or electromagnetic fields that are high frequency. So it's disturbing our body's ability to bring nutrients through the cell membrane into the cell from the blood supply, which is where the nutrients are coming around from our foods and our supplements. And so by getting on this pulsed electromagnetic field, it's optimizing our polarity for all those functions. Now, as it pertains to the Superhuman Protocol, step 2 is exercise with oxygen therapy. So in this step 1, we are optimizing our red blood cells' ability to carry oxygen. So in a normal state, our red blood cells are sort of very big and they have a net negative charge. So they'll repel each other as they go through the bloodstream. If you ever try to put 2 like negative poles of a magnet together, you can't do it. So the idea is that's the proper polarity for our red blood cells. However, these electromagnetic frequencies that are high coming from the electrical grid and our devices are actually causing the opposite thing to happen. So now our red blood cells are starting to shrink and they clump together. And you can imagine looking at a bunch of grapes as opposed to these big free balloons. Those grapes don't carry oxygen very well. So step 2, being exercise with oxygen therapy, we just prepped those red blood cells to carry oxygen. And now in step 2, we're actually taking not the 20% of oxygen that we breathe in our atmosphere, but we're breathing through a mask, through a cylinder that has 98% oxygen purity. So that's almost 100% oxygen purity. So now when we're exercising and doing some intermittent sprints, and we use a Bowflex stepper, we've had an assault bike in the past, but the idea is to create the need for more oxygen to be drawn in, create that oxygen debt with those sprints. So now instead of just paying that debt back with 20%, paying it back with almost 100%. So you're flooding your tissue with oxygen. And this is setting us up for step 3. And this is really where the end game happens of that cellular biooptimization. You see, that red light is going to drive any free radicals that are in our cells. And of course, free radicals are things that molecules in our environment, many times from toxins, that will actually rob our own cellular structures inside of electrons, causing damage and deterioration, but also it blocks oxygen from getting onto that last part of the electron transport train where we're making that ATP in that optimal oxidative phosphorylation setting. So again, oxygen is essential for that last part of the energy production, because if our cells are making energy without oxygen, it's only running at like 2 horsepower. It's not 2 horsepower, but you get the idea. But when oxygen's present, it's 36 horsepower. There's a huge difference between cell metabolism at 2 horsepower versus 36 horsepower. So that is really where that technology is driving that last step. We've just prepped it, getting the optimal oxygen carrying capability, provided that oxygen in almost 100% concentration, way more than most people are walking around with, and then driving it into the cell to optimize that cell energy production. So that cell is now fortified, from that energetic standpoint of creating energy. And again, it's not giving us anything we're not capable of, but people aren't walking around like this in this modern world.
Right. Yeah. Oh, really cool. Thank you for the overview. Like I'm a bit familiar with all these technologies, but never have I seen them put together until you introduced me to it in our previous chat. And I just love the idea so much. We used to have a PEMF mat here, and I didn't really understand it. I wasn't able to eloquently describe it, the effects of it like you can. But I know that it was here prior to when I was here, and I didn't show any interest at the time. But I know that people who used it, they swore by, like they were obsessed with it. And I just love that so much. And we were just, of course, it was a single therapy. We're using it for pain and fatigue. And people would get off that thing. Sometimes it would be too much, right? It could be overstimulating. Yeah. But most of the time, and of course, these were recurring people, they had found that was a key therapy for them. They felt less pain and more energy. And has that been your experience too, just as a single therapy?
Yes. So we do have some people that use it as a standalone. Yeah. And most of those people are coming from like an inflammation standpoint. One of the features that this particular model has, it has a smaller pad that you can have all the pulsed electromagnetic field coming through this for a local area. So let's say if you have neck and upper back, pain and tension, or lower back, you can just lay on the pillow itself and it concentrates that right into the symptomatic area. So we've used that in conjunction with some of the other modalities, the chiropractic, because getting inflammation down is a key, effort to remove pain and resolve that. Now, it's not just about removing pain, it's about correcting the dysfunction that's ultimately causing it. But to have something that can really, in a non-medicinal way, help somebody reduce pain dramatically in a very short session with something that's as natural as our plus minus charges in our body just being realigned, so to speak, is very invaluable. So we have used that in that way for many people, but most people these days are using the entire protocol, because the 3-step protocol just takes some leaps and bounds in so many ways from a wellness standpoint, from starting at a very low level of various, long haul COVID or whatever it might be, and just taking them to a level of energy, pain-free living strength, great sleep, like all those things are happening. But this is how we should all be. Like, we should feel this way every day.
For sure.
But unfortunately, the modern world is not allowing that. So this is our, greatest weapon that we have here in the office against that war, for that
Definitely.
war.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really great to hear, given that I have an exercise with oxygen therapy tank bike combined with the tool, and we use it in long COVID, right? We use it in chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID. And we used to use it for athletes. We were doing high altitude training where we would turn off the oxygen and flip it back on and go back and forth. We don't have that anymore. We only have what you're describing, but I haven't combined it with the mat. And now I'm so incredibly curious to combine it with the mat. Now tell me about the typical protocol that someone could expect on this Bowflex device with the exercise with oxygen therapy. How long would they spend on it? What would the intensity be? What's it like?
So one of the things, and it depends on the sort of the condition of the person when they first come in. I mean, we have some UFC fighters that are doing it prior to their matches, and everyone that's done it hasn't lost.
Oh, okay, good. Keep track of that.
Oh, yeah, of course. And the reason is because their recovery speed is so incredible. When they do a 3-minute round, typically it takes some time, to recover. They give them a minute in between. But the average person that's at that level of performance, they're recovering from their sprint in usually under 20 or 30 seconds, where their heart rate's going back to the normal range from, going up as high as like 140 beats per minute with, an all-out sprint for 20 or 30 seconds. So that's the thing that I see with these guys, because they all monitor that. And so that's the sweet spot they're looking for in their performance. So again, that's one end of the spectrum. But then we have other people, and they're probably spending 7 to 10 minutes on it and I've been doing it for 3 years. So I'll usually start with a sprint and I'll do about 7 or 8 sprints inside of 10 minutes. And that's all I need, because my body is saturated with oxygen at that point. And that's where they're at. But some people that are more lower level, starting from more of a deficit, like long haul COVID or some of the other things that they might be unaware of what the cause is, but now they're just trying to optimize cellular function. They might spend, 15 minutes on there going at a slower pace, but still elevating their heart rate, intermittently. But what I can tell you is their capacity to do that gets better and better and better, no matter what deficit they're starting with.
Oh, completely. I used to see that with the EWAT high altitude training. We used to see every session they could tolerate longer deficits and recover faster from their deficit sprints. It was really cool.
I'd like to ask you a question, because have you seen, because this is what happens here, typically when you go out and do sprints, let's say you're doing wind sprints or something on a field, you usually your first few are your best, and then you start to lose gas. Well, with EWAT now, the best ones are the last ones.
Yeah.
You're actually improving because you recover quicker. Your capacity to go more intensely gets better and better and better. So that's something that's very unique. It's happened the first day I did it, and it happens every single day, since then. And everybody here does it. They can't wait to their third or fourth sprint, because that's when they're really hitting their stride and really being able to power it out.
Yeah, we see the same thing. And I chalk it up to the fact that the warm-up is just more efficient. So, you've got this, consider the neuromuscular warm-ups and the cardiovascular warm-ups that athletes do. The two systems are not working at the same rate, or warming up at the same rate.
Right.
So for example, if you're really good at your movement, you can warm up the nervous system really quick, right? It's gonna be fine. But the lungs and heart can take a few minutes.
Absolutely.
To become flexible enough to get to 140 in 20 seconds, you need to warm up. You need to do 10, 15 minutes. But with EWAT, you can do it in like a few minutes.
Right. Now, I really but I encourage you to try the PEMF first and see the difference.
See the difference. I got to do it.
It's your charges, your electromagnetic fields working optimally first. The next part is just such a sweet layer on the top that's noticeably different than when you're just working with, a less than optimum polarity in your body, to try to do the same thing.
For sure. And then on the cold laser side of things, on the red light therapy side of things, we've been using red light therapy for skin conditions in our clinic, but we don't have a pad. We only have a wand. But there's clinics around here who have, tables and places where people can lie down, and they have like actual wall mounted units and things. A lot of people here have them at home in Vancouver. It's incredibly common to have them at home. I've never had an opportunity to try one, and I would just love to get that experience. I'm wondering if you could describe what it's like to be standing in front of a red light, and maybe how it differs from the other therapies.
Yeah, so red light, in the particular model we have, it's a bed model, so it's actually laid down. It kind of looks like a tanning bed. It's sort of the same chassis, but obviously it's not UV. It's infrared and red light, or near infrared and red light.
Correct.
And so I had the original Aspen Theralite 360 bed came in 2019. I got one of the first 27 that came into the country, I think. And so the irradiance on that particular bed was under 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, which was great. It was like the first of its kind, because most of them were under 50 at that time that were on the market at, then 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And there's 45,000 diodes of light. So there's the red light, 630 to 650 nanometers. Then there's two in the 800 range, in the low 800 and the high 800. And then there's one in the high 900 range. So the experience in that was definitely something that you're able to feel almost like somewhere between a stimulation and a relaxing effect. Partially because I think you're also getting your blood vessels to relax, and you're improving blood flow. So there's a relaxation, but at the same time, there's a stimulation of metabolic function in the cell, ATP production.
Yeah.
So it was a very unusual combination of those two things. But about 2 years ago, we upgraded to their next or latest generation, which is at 165 milliwatts per centimeter squared, which again, the same specs, but it took it up about 64% more power. And the very first time I went in there, I felt like my cells like tingling. It was palpable to me compared to the one that I had. And other people that had used the old one immediately found that effect. So there's a very palpable upgrade of energy in your body. And I'm doing it at 4 o'clock in the morning before I go to the gym. So coming from sleep and then kind of walking in, not dragging myself in. I walk in pretty good, but the way I walk out is quite different when I'm geared up from that 3-step process, the red light being the last one. But it's palpable how it gets your mind so clear.
Yeah.
My eyesight's actually improved. I've been doing it with my eyes open in the thing for like the last year. So it's interesting too, because, we have goggles for them to wear, but I took a shot and said, something, this is fixing things at the cell level. Let's see what happens. I need readers. I'm going to need them more, or maybe I won't need them as bad. So I took a shot and it's been helping.
Wow. Good for you. Good for you. Bold. So I love that. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm going to give it a try, and I bet you it'll be similar.
You'll never want to have it not in your life anymore. I could promise you that.
Definitely. Got to be careful with those things. So how did you get into this? I need to know about your career. I need to know about the different, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. What was it like kind of before all this, and what really motivated you? Kind of reflect on what you said earlier. What really motivated you to get into this type of approach?
So, as most things are, I think maybe you have your own story. Most of us have some kind of personal experience that drives us into a particular career direction. I myself was supposed to be going into a multi-generational plumbing manufacturing business that was family, owned. My great-grandfather started, my grandfather took over, my dad took over, and I was kind of being groomed to do that. But I think there's a few things that happened early on to me. First of all, when I was 9 years old, we moved into a new neighborhood. It was sort of the early suburban development in South Long Island in New York. So most all of us that were moving out, they were coming from Queens or Brooklyn or Manhattan or Staten Island or the Bronx. So it was interesting because, living in the city, there's a certain, level of city life and how that is. It was in the early 1960s, so it's a little bit, little rough at times. Things weren't gentrified then. And so the same mentality came with, the kids that moved into the neighborhood, but now it's the suburbs. So it's very different. You don't have these big skyscrapers and buildings around you. You have homes and things like that, but the mentality was kind of the same. So it was a little bit of a rough neighborhood for the first couple of years. I remember moving in and riding my bike, and some kid down the street started up with me the first day. So very, this is going somewhere, let me tell you.
No,
so,
I hear you.
Very fortunate for me. Kid next door to me, he was a couple years older. He was like in great shape. So his father was into the martial arts. In fact, he used to take us to Bruce Lee movies when they come out, back in the day. And he got me into the idea that exercise was a way to become strong. I wanted to be strong because I didn't want to be victimized. That was my motivation at the time. So he explained to me how exercise can make you strong. But he also talked about how food can add to that, making you stronger. So he actually got me off of Pop-Tarts and Captain Crunch and Wonder Bread, and to start to eat real food. Wow. Food from, what grew, and food that, was from an animal. And the fact they were butchers, so he used to get us very high quality meat. So this was at 10 years old. I was very influenced by this whole concept. And so much to the point that by the time I was, mid-teen, I was actually, and nobody worked out back then. We all played sports in the streets. We rode our bike. I mean, that was normal. No kid was fat either. We had one fat kid in the neighborhood, but his whole family was. So it was just normal that we were all, kind of normal, that the food we got was still better quality. It wasn't, over-farmed at the time. And so we still had the nutrients, but the idea of exercising and getting stronger, that was not popular. There was no gyms around, at the time. So I was doing stuff in my basement. And by the time I was 15, I was really like pretty good shape for, a 15-year-old. But then I had a motorcycle injury. A friend of mine had a motorcycle. I ended up breaking my neck in a couple of places.
No.
And so I hit it because I wasn't supposed to be on a motorcycle, and I was more afraid of my dad, getting in trouble with him for being on the motorcycle than what happened to me. So I didn't actually learn. My neck was broken for about 4 more years. When I was 19, I had a summer job, and I was working in a fitness center, and this guy who was a young chiropractic clinician, he saw that I was having trouble turning my head. So he convinced me to come into the office, and I got x-rays, and he showed me how I had broken my neck some years ago in 2 spots.
No.
And I have to tell you, that first adjustment just kind of was like one of those aha moments, like where like everything just kind of opened up for me. Not only was the pain gone, but I had this rush of energy that like just kind of renewed like how had been feeling for some time. And then I realized like this is amazing. Something that just caused my body to like re-energize itself, to get this big burst of energy. And the fact that chiropractic as a profession really looks at optimizing body function by removing obstacles to its own health and to fortify deficiency. So that I'd already kind of been living that, but then it all kind of clicked together and I realized that this had to be my direction. And the hardest thing for me to do was tell my dad, I don't think I want to do the business anymore.
Completely.
Fortunately, he wasn't sentimental about it, and it worked out great. He was very supportive. So those incidents, I think, what really propelled me into the idea that your body can be strong if you do certain things to it and you give it certain things that it needs, to support that process, and that you can do things to the body to keep the body working better and better and better. And of course, as technologies in the last 40 years that I've been doing this, things like the red light, the PEMF, exercise with oxygen therapy, then of course, micronutrient testing, methylation detox, understanding at the cellular level how really individualized we are in many ways, and how that we can identify that can really help me as an individual to really optimize myself, but then as a practitioner to give that same gift to somebody else, that they can learn things about themselves that they should have known all this time, but our healthcare system hasn't been set up to offer that, starting at, pediatric age, which is really where we need to start with this if we're going to do it right.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements, empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
Oh, completely. Yeah, you're right. Like these stories of our childhoods. I have such a similar story. I was influenced significantly by my chiropractor in my neighborhood. I actually ended up working for him because I loved him so much. Yep. I ended up being his assistant for about a year and just learned so much. And I mean, he changed people's lives every single day. It was just incredible stuff. It's really cool that you're able to combine all these different modalities to support the person holistically. Now I spend my days thinking about being as holistic as possible. And so many people are doing this in different ways. And I just love that so much. You had mentioned in your prior call that people are seeking you out from all over the world. Tell me about what that's been like.
Yeah, so fortunately, in the last maybe 5 or 6 months, I had been offered or invited to go on some podcasts. And, the podcaster themselves might be, let's say, we're in South Florida, and they might be in California or UK or Australia or other states in the country. And because of that, and some of the things that, we'll be talking about and that I've talked about in terms of how personalized nutrition has gotten and the kind of benefit and value you can really gain from it. There's a lot of people, not just here in South Florida or where you are, but everywhere in the world, people are looking for more answers to why they don't feel as good as they should. And so that's what prompted a lot of the things where I'm now able to have conversations with people online, get them the testing they need after listening to what they've been going through, then have the results and do reviews with them and be able to customize a plan that's going to specifically address their nutritional needs and in the forms they need to be in and based on deficiencies, so that those things that we call symptoms are really just drop-down effects from the inability to give the body what it needs to just function normally. And so that's what I've learned. It's not just here in this country. I have a fellow from the Netherlands. He did it. Now his wife's doing it. Somebody from Australia and many states around the country too. So it's really cool because before then, I only could help people that might walk into my office. Mm-hmm. But because of the nature of this testing and the being able to follow up and do it like from a telemedicine standpoint, it's so invaluable. I'd love to be able to reach people that, again, might not ever walk into the office here.
Oh, completely. I'm writing this a paper right now on the economic impacts of disease prevention and how this type of approach is becoming global. And I had to do a review on where might be a nice place to sort of consider expanding if you were kind of new to the industry or building up your current practice. And we decided, my group and I decided to evaluate Dubai, the UAE. And the entire evaluation is like, this is an amazing idea. The people are so engaged and loving it and spending money on their health and trying to be as healthy as possible and trying to combat this rise of diabetes and cardiovascular disease in places where you may not have considered before. So it's really becoming global, and you're right there on the forefront. And you've added in your assessments, you mentioned a couple times already, nutritional analysis, nutrient deficiency analysis, methylation analysis. Tell me about the integration of these assessments into your practice. What's that been like, and the benefits that you've seen from doing such?
Well, a lot of times it really does start with people coming in with some kind of pain syndrome, but they think that's why they're coming in, but then through conversation we find out there's a lot more going on there. In fact, in most cases, and I've learned this more and more over time, even early on when I left school, I realized that structural damage wasn't as impactful on how much pain somebody's going to experience. In other words, there's not a direct correlation between, the herniated disc or the spinal stenosis and the amount of pain and dysfunction somebody's going to have. Because I have people that on X-ray, they look pretty good, or on MRI, they look pretty good. However, physically and functionally, they're a mess. Pain, dysfunction, lack of mobility, dysfunction in so many ways. And then I have people that had considerable X-ray or MRI destruction or damage and very little pain and dysfunction. So I realized that that's not the whole picture. And what the bottom line came down to was inflammation. Mm-hmm. Some people are having a higher level of inflammation in their body for various reasons. And so understanding the real origin of inflammation in somebody is key to being able to take that piece out of it. Because unfortunately, the Western model is pain management, which means that somebody's going to have to live with pain. How do we make it as comfortable as possible? As opposed to saying, okay, what's really causing this pain? And we can't experience pain if there's no inflammation, because it's the inflammatory process that stimulates, the pain receptors in our body to tell our brain we have pain. So there's so many reasons at the nutritional level that cause inflammation. As an example, one of the things that we also employ too is food sensitivity testing. Because, thereby you're going to be eating something on a regular basis that could seem like healthy to you, salmon or an apple or something like that. But your body might be seeing it as an invader and have an immune response to it, causing inflammation. And it's not like an allergy, which will happen. You eat your strawberries and you break out in hives immediately. It's not like that. It's much more insidious. So most people don't realize, 3 days later after eating something that they're more inflamed, their pain levels go up. So many times I'll start to introduce the concept of the nutritional aspect when somebody has more of a generalized inflammation in their body, as opposed to just more like a localized tendonitis, let's say. And then, I think a lot of what I do is I share my lifestyle with my patients, especially when they're early on, because, I'm older than many of my patients. I'm in my mid-60s. Many of them are somewhere between their 20s and, let's say, their 50s. And I feel better than a lot of them.
Yeah,
and it's not like I didn't have the wear and tear on my body. I have.
Definitely.
But the things I've learned along the way and the lifestyle, because a lot of people say, you're in your mid-60s, you got to be kidding me. So it's the pat on the back is not how pretty it looks in the mirror. The pat on the back is how great you feel every day. And when I talk about that to people, to try to encourage them, again, that you need to invest in the incline of your health. You can't see health as a $35 copayment in your doctor's office. That's not health.
Right.
It has to be something that you endeavor every day, many things, many layers, many times, to optimize and have a lifestyle that supports that inclination of health instead of just managing a decline. So that's a lot of how, since the pandemic especially, because I've had more and more opportunity of people coming in, not just with back pain, but they feel lousy everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They poor sleep, thinking that they're eating a great diet. They can't lose weight sometimes. And so all these different layers are now present more than ever. And so I think it's given me an opportunity to really be more at the forefront with a lot of this testing, where I think I've cherry picked it a little bit some years ago, didn't offer it to just anybody. now I'm trying to make it a point to let everybody know this option exists. And I always share my own results with them and see, like, this is where my deficits were. This is what I did about it. And this is how it is now. I show them my retest where I had 14 deficiencies intracellular the first time I did it. It was after COVID, so I know COVID attacks the cell membrane. And so this was a way for me to really show in black and white, like, this is what was going on with me. These are the symptoms. I had high blood pressure and things like that. And now that I've identified these things and I've done this regimen in a very customized way, all things are normal again. And, now I had superhuman and all the other things I do supportively. That's, just giving me at my mid-60s feeling like I'm in my mid-30s. And
incredible.
People want more than ever today.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We need those stories, especially coming from your trusted person.
Right.
I do think there's incredible value in that. I try to support, give some of this info to the young grads. Like, you want to be a picture of health. That's for sure. And then you want to be able to share. You want to be able to tell your story. And, and while doing that, it gives you an opportunity to educate. And what you've done here today is not only shown, that, your picture of health is at a very high level, but also that, you can get out there and you can educate about this holistic approach. And, I'm finding it easier and easier because the evidence is just building and building and building. Like, for example, on the inflammation side of things, we know that in our region of the world, people are so deficient in vitamin D. It's unbelievable. And it's an important regulator of immune function, and inflammation resolving is less efficient if my vitamin D is low, in addition to other nutrients, of course. But it's the same thing with this food sensitivity approach. I mean, we had a person yesterday with 50 food sensitivities and this generalized inflammation for years without knowing, because there's not a ton of digestive symptoms. And that's wild to me and so incredibly powerful. And now they're incredibly motivated, of course. It's really fun.
Yeah. I find sometimes the biggest challenge is because it's almost every time on every test, the things people are sensitive to, either mildly or severely, are things that they love to eat all the time. So the hardest thing is to get the results and be compliant with them. So, when people are telling me how they're having a hard time, avoiding this, I said, look, you got to make a decision. You're going to either be more important that you're going to eat that stuff, or it's going to be more important that, these symptoms are going to go away and you're going to feel better. So, you have to make that distinction and choice. I'd say that's probably the bigger challenge for so many people. People have a hard time with menu planning and making it like a priority, as opposed to looking at food as like some kind of pleasure. And, I owe it to myself to feel good from eating the foods I like, as opposed to seeing it as, not eating to live, but, I'm not living to eat, but eating to live kind of idea.
Completely.
So that's the difference.
That gives you an opportunity to talk about that. Like we try to do this big, education around IgG, because we test IgG response for food sensitivity. That's what we do. And it's a yes/no question from the immune system. And then if it's a yes and there's high consumption, then the scores are very high. If it's a yes and it's low consumption, then often the scores are still in the elevated range, but not super high. And so we teach them about that, and we try to think about how it is a yes at the current time, and the abundance is something that is a problem. And these things, the antigen-antibody complexes, they settle in tissues and drive that inflammation cascade.
Yeah. And it could affect so many systems in so many ways too. It's not just bloating in the gut, or it's not just, more low back pain than not. There's so many things, cardiovascular, diabetes too. I mean, there's so many things metabolically that can be the drop-down effect. And people even try to negotiate, say, well, what if I just have like this little tiny piece? I said, that little tiny piece in your eyes is a mountain to your biochemistry and your immune system. So, that's, just keep that perspective. You got to think about that microscopic level, not like what you think your eyes are seeing in a small piece of food. And if you think you can just eat that little piece, why not just not eat it at all?
Completely.
So you got to try to counsel people, and you got to understand where they're coming from, and, kind of meet them there, because you don't want to shame them into it. But I always tell people from the get-go, if you're going to do this testing, chances are you're going to be having to avoid things that you like. So just prepare yourself ahead of time, because if you really want the results, if you want to feel better than you're feeling now, and this is the reason for you doing it, really try to drill down on that concept. Because in 6 months from now, you could probably start introducing it a little at a time, but I guarantee you by that point, you probably won't care anymore, because you're going to find other things that work for you that you'll be just as happy with. Completely. One area where I'm always trying to improve, and for some reason, I just can't
become expert level in this realm is in the methylation testing review. I'm interested about how you use this test, when you think it's appropriate, and how you kind of apply therapies based on the results.
Yes, I mean, my attitude about this is that every child born needs to have this at their first doctor visit when they go to the doctor, because this methylation cycle is something that we're all born with and we're all going to die with. And how it affects our ability to process the raw materials or nutrients from our foods and our supplements is going to affect us every single day of our life. These processes are happening about 1 billion times a second in our cells. This methylation of nutrients, and methylation is how we convert the nutrients to the form the body can use. So in other words, people, associate like eating an orange with vitamin C. Well, guess what? You're not going to be able to use the vitamin C from that orange until it's methylated, until it's converted into a usable form so your body can use it. So you have to think about, okay, I can't just take the food and the nutrients are going to become my nutrients. They have to be changed by the body. And unfortunately, we have some variance in our human, experience through our parents and, great-grandparents and so on and so forth. But, having the inability to process certain nutrients isn't the big problem. Not knowing that you have the inability is the key. So once you can identify that, because it's going to affect your entire life of how your body makes things that it needs. So I say everybody needs at the very least to know their methylation. I love to have them do their micronutrient assay on top of that, so at least they can know specifically what the deficiencies are, whether it's drop-down effects from lack of proper methylation or proper nutrition or, whatever it might be that's causing it. Those two together give a very powerful impact to everybody. Anybody out there can benefit from knowing this knowledge. So again, I stopped really thinking about it just to go to the individuals who I think needed it the most and try to tell them this is something that we all should have known from day one, because it affects us every day of our entire lives. And so, that since I took that attitude, Doc, I have to tell you, more and more people see the importance of it, because when they hear what that means, methylation, and that they might have an issue with that, it could change a whole lot in somebody's life. So I think that this is something that we all need to do, and we all need to know about ourselves. It's that impactful.
And then what's your approach? If someone finds out that they're a poor methylator, are you saying methyl donors for life? Are you pressing and pulsing? What's kind of the protocol that you mostly use?
Yeah, so again, we're using both the micronutrient. I use them in combination, and I show them both. I show my test results as the test that they're getting the visual on what this looks like. And we're using the 5 main researched methylation enzymes, MTHFR, MTRR, MTR, ACHY, and then the COMT. So there's other genes, of course, and I let them know that. But these ones have been very, very much studied and very predictable about their effects and how that complements with getting the right nutrition to work around the areas where there's deficits. But then you add the other layer of specific intracellular micronutrient deficiencies. Now you have a bigger picture of what's not happening. Some of it you can trace back to the methylation problems, but some of them you can trace back to other things going on. And then in a perfect world, I get them to do the food sensitivity testing too, because sometimes that will affect even the supplement regimen or the antioxidant regimen, because the antioxidant, as you know, we see what they're most highly protected by, which particular antioxidants. You can't just throw any antioxidants on people, because they're not always fully protected for every individual. So having all of that information gives somebody the best chance, at least from a starting point, to really turn things around from a health standpoint. But if I can't get them on the food sensitivity, I'll get them with the other 2 things just to tell them the importance of it, because that's really how we have to, number one, not only know the workarounds. Like if we have the MTHFR homozygous, variant, which means it's not working at all. We're not converting folic acid or folate into 5-methylfolate. Not only do we have to bypass it and supplement with 5-methylfolate, but we also have to avoid taking folate and folic acid in, because we don't want that building up in our body unconverted. And this is the thing that really gets a lot of people, because a lot of people that I see, they're fitness minded, they do the energy drinks. And except for 1 or 2 energy drinks out there, they all have cyanocobalamin, which, as you know, we're not converting to methylcobalamin, and it just builds up cyanide in our body. And plus it's synthetic, it's made from like wastewater. So, people have no idea that they can be drinking something that their body's not processing. So not only are they not getting B12, but they're also building up levels of toxins in their bodies that they should not be taking in. So both of that becomes more impactful, not just knowing what you're missing, but when you're taking in something your body can't convert, that has its own set of issues as well.
Oh, completely. I found out that I'm a poor methylator, so I'm thinking selfishly again, but actually I do have a review today that I need to be prepared for. These things are difficult. Taking notes for sure, but so transformational, right? Like, my experience so far has been on a personal level. Methylfolate, it makes me feel different. I experience something new when I take that, and that's very interesting to me and exciting. And I think that we're so early, but it's so positive. We have a couple cases of severe anxiety that were likely due to this metabolic issue of poor methylation, and fixing that has been quite transformational for these people. That's really, really fun to see.
And it happens quickly when you give them what they need. The body's an amazing machine, amazing. I mean, just the biochemical system alone is just so, there's a God that made all this. This stuff doesn't just happen. It's so perfected in such a way that everything affects everything, and we can be optimized. There is a way to function optimally. We're just at more of a disadvantage in the modern world because we just have more working against us. Think about it. The natural world around us really supports us in so many ways. The modern world kind of doesn't support us and hurts us in so many ways. So we have to see how we can recreate what the natural world around us has done for us for centuries in this modern world, and try to, keep that as our fortification so we don't, succumb and just, lose that war sooner than later, or lose quality of life because of it.
Definitely. Well, what can we do in that same vein? What can we do with people listening who don't have access to someone like you or I, or who can't do the tests and do the therapies, but is interested in this biocellular optimization, this kind of broad idea that you're using the holistic approach to benefit? Where could they start? Because modern living, this is going to continue. In fact, it's probably worsening. Food is becoming more deficient, right? Like the pollution is unbelievable. You were mentioning about EMFs, and I've studied the recommended daily exposures globally, and tried to think about this for certain patients who have measured their communities. What can a person do who can't either afford or doesn't have access to someone like you or I?
So the cool part is that just about everything that we employ here actually is derived from nature. Mm-hmm. The pulse electromagnetic field is derived from the Earth's own electromagnetic pulse. And, by simply getting out barefoot onto the real ground, sand, dirt, each day for a good solid 30 minutes or maybe multiple exposures, that's going to help not only drain some of the EMFs that your body might be holding onto from that exposure, but it's also going to help to just recharge and repolarize your body the way it's supposed to be. Because, we've been doing this for centuries. That's how we've lived. We didn't have rubber soles. We had, leather ones or cloth or whatever it was. So we didn't have things that were impeding the Earth's natural pulse for us. So getting out there barefoot on the natural ground of the Earth is one easy way that you can do it. They do have grounding mats that you can get if you're, let's say, living in an urban area. And the grounding mats are simply plugging into your outlet. And remember, all of our electrical grid is grounded to the Earth. All of our electricity has a ground. So you are actually plugging into the Earth through these grounding mats, as opposed to a pulsed electromagnetic field, which has its own low-level pulse that it emits. But in lieu of being able to get onto the ground itself, just being able to get a grounding mat could be very helpful, especially if you spend most of your day in front of a computer screen. You could have that mat right underneath you. So as these things are coming at you, they're also being drained out at the same time. So that's the first thing. Second thing is getting out and getting some fresh air and doing some deep breathing exercises. Many people are shallow breathers. They don't think about breathing, but it's actually pretty simple if you take some of the Wim Hof technique, where you're doing a series of very deep inhales and exhales. And then with the goal being at the end of each little session, you're going to fully exhale and you hold it as long as you can. And then until you can't hold it anymore. And then you're going to inhale and hold that as long as you can. And what that does is it increases what's called the partial pressure of oxygen. In other words, the pressure of oxygen that's coming into our lungs and into our bloodstreams. We create that increase It's the same thing that we do when we're doing a sprint on a piece of equipment or running out there. We're creating an increase in the oxygen pressure pushing into our body, so the concentration of oxygen is getting drawn in is greater and greater. So that's a way to get almost like an EWAT effect without doing EWAT. Now, if you want to up that, do that while you're walking. Do the deep breathing while you're walking and hold that breath while you're moving, as opposed to just being still about it. So that's another way to augment that. And of course, getting out into the sunlight, getting out into those early rays are the best ones, because that's when the best part of the sunlight is out, those first, earlier parts of when sunrise happens. So you don't have much of the UV, which happens later in the day. So superhuman protocol is just that. It's taking the earth, the oxygen, and the light and getting that benefit. But you can do that. And I guarantee if you do that for a week where you haven't been doing that, you'll feel a very noticeable difference in your body, because you're creating that effect where you're just optimizing what most of us are just not walking around with these days. So that would be the first recommendation I would make. If I would make other ones, hydration is a big thing, and most people don't realize it. So many people are walking around dehydrated, and they'll say, well, I'm drinking tons of water. Yeah, but you know what? It might not be getting inside the cell, because maybe you don't have enough trace minerals in the body. Maybe the electrolytes are low, because a lot of people are, because we don't have the mineralization of the soil anymore like we used to. Unless you're really getting fortification of minerals and electrolytes, you're going to be deficient, and it's going to definitely affect the hydration of the cell, thereby the function of the cell too, because a dehydrated cell is not going to optimize energy production. So I myself, I put some natural sea salt into my water every morning. It's like 96 trace minerals, and then that's my first 48 ounces, and then my second, which is what I drink throughout the day, I also put it in there, because I'm very active all day. I'm a solid 12 hours up and around, moving, exercising, and working on people. And I find that that's a huge benefit of keeping my fatigue level way down and my energy level way up, because I've had times where I haven't been hydrated properly, and believe me, you feel it. So those things alone can just turn the way you feel, every day around in a very simple way, even if you don't have access to all the things that, we've talked about.
Those are excellent tips. I was taking mental notes for my kids for this evening. I'm going to do the superhuman protocol outside in our yard tonight. I'm going to do that.
Good. Do it.
Oh my gosh.
Work hard on the breathing too. It works. You can't imagine how energized you feel when you really take that oxygen in.
Oh, believe me, I'm a big Wim Hof guy. One time I hadn't done push-ups in a while, and I did less than one, held my breath, and while holding my breath did 70 push-ups. And that was more than I had done in a while. I was quite proud of myself, but a lot of it was the breathing.
That's a great endeavor, and that's really going to go far to, again, increase that partial pressure of oxygen coming in.
Yes. I got my kids doing Tabata a few days a week, just using, there's like kids YouTube videos that teach them how to do basic body weight movements. Yep. And I think we should integrate some grounding and some deep breathing into this. This could be cool.
It'll be measurably different, even for the kids. They'll notice the difference too. And it's great. I love that. I've been exercising since I'm 10, as I mentioned. All my 4 kids, 2 sons and 2 daughters, they all have the same kind of mentality that I do about their food and exercise. And I didn't shove it down their throat. They just know that dad works out. This is how he eats. This is something he does. So I just kind of led by example. But fortunately, each one in their own way found it, and it's a big part of their life. So I feel really good about that.
Way to go.
So many kids today, don't. And it's up to parents to make that happen, because society's already, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but we couldn't graduate high school if we didn't have gym class and we didn't pass John F. Kennedy's President Council on Physical Fitness test. And, that's all but gone now. I'm hoping that they start to bring that back to the school systems, because that is something that's going to instill, in young people, the education about their bodies and how important that is moving forward, now more than ever.
Oh, completely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think policy can make a big difference, and that's a simple policy that could be implemented like this afternoon.
Yeah,
it can be very easy to implement. Hard to implement, easy to write up. And I think that, but it would be obviously so transformational.
Parents got to be the leaders on this one. That's why I say.
Definitely. Now we have a lot of young grads, new grads who watch our program, and I'm wondering if you have any advice to them. Maybe someone coming out in the same profession as you. Think back to your first few years. What would you say to yourself, maybe back then, that would, help you help as many people as possible in the way that you want to do it?
So I would say, first of all, understand that school is really only giving you the right to go out there and start learning what it's really like with people and how it is to take care of them, and the complexities of the humans, not just in their biochemistry, but even mentally. How do you get to somebody that ultimately needs to make a change if you're going to be able to help them? And so being aware of how you meet people where they are, and then also know that what you learned in school is not nearly enough of what you need to know to really be effective. And there's so many resources today about modalities that, and maybe haven't even come out yet. So I've always been someone that I'm always looking like, what's the newest and best way for me to do what I do better? How can I help people in a way that's going to surpass what my colleagues might be doing? How do I set myself apart? Not to be the famous guy, but maybe to build a value that the rest of my industry doesn't necessarily offer. And so I like that. I'm in my mid 60s. Theoretically, I should be retiring. There's no way I even consider that now, because I just love what I do. And because there's so much new stuff coming out, and there's so many people out there that still need this, that don't even know that this kind of stuff exists and could be helping them. I feel like I'm almost starting like a new career later in life that's an offshoot of the things I've learned sort of my earlier time in the career, but to always be open to innovation and to see what's where's things going, where as our aging population, what are their needs going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, and how do we meet those needs now, starting out from a preventive standpoint? So that's the kind of thing that I would suggest that people start to think in those ways. Don't just think about recreating what you learned in school. Be thirsty for the knowledge. Listen to podcasts, go to webinars, pick and choose the things that really appeal to you, especially things that you want to implement into your own life, because the easiest way to share health information is sharing your own lifestyle and how things, how it impacted you, because then you're just telling a story. You're telling your story. And then it makes it very easy. You're not convincing anybody of anything. You're being as authentic as you can be. And you have to walk the walk. You really have to embody what it is that you're trying to bring across to people, because the one thing I could tell is if you don't, it's not going to be credible, and you're not going to see the success, with people, or even, professionally, on a personal level and financially, all that stuff. You don't want to walk into work every day feeling like you're going to work. You want to feel like you're living your life's purpose, and this is what you're purpose for. And you're going to walk away every day from work saying, this is what I'm supposed to be doing today, because this is what happened to Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, and their kid, and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing that can replace that feeling financially than knowing that I just impacted somebody's life. Not just because I'm so great, but I was fortunate to expose myself to things and learn things that maybe aren't common knowledge, but are very impactful when they're implemented.
Oh, very well put and very inspiring. I really appreciate those words. Listen, David, it was so nice chatting with you. Thanks so much for coming on Personalized. We're so great to have learned everything that we've learned today from you. And I think that you've given us lots to take away, from testing to career development to at-home protocols. It's exciting and inspiring, and I think that it will resonate with a lot of people. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today. I enjoy speaking about these things, and so more and more people can be reached and take advantage of this and take control of their health and get into self-care and not healthcare, and invest in the inclination of health and not manage the decline.
There you go. You got it. Thanks so much, David. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Dizer and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.